Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of the Ray2Go Show. Today, my brilliant team and I will be discussing emotions, not our own personal emotions, but the importance of making emotional connections with your audience, be either their clients or whoever you're speaking to. Whether that's a valid target to try to reach, and I think I'm going to just jump ahead here. We're not even going to discuss that. I think it's important that we make an emotional connection, and there's all kinds of reasons for that, which we will go into during this show. But people, I'm just going to go to a note that I had made earlier, because people are more likely to buy from companies that they feel connected to. Big brands we know do that, like Apple, Harley-Davidson, Nike. But small guy, how do you do that? You don't have the funds to create these huge little mini movies that show at Super Bowl or at Christmas, with little puppies and draft horses and stuff. So how do you make a personal connection? Because the reason you want to do that, of course, is that if people feel connected to you, they're willing to, I don't know, even pay a premium price for a product or a service, or just use you as the top of mind person, as opposed to racing down to the bottom of the cheapest price. Because really, if you race down to the bottom and keep doing that to try to match low prices, all you're going to get is dirt. So we're going to discuss making emotional connections, how to do that, why should we do that, and I'm going to introduce the panel, and we're going to start with Jessica. Jessica, how are you?
You know what? I am pretty darn good, and I'm wearing my cool new jacket today. I was really excited. I bought it before I came in. It's cold enough. I get to wear it today. So.
Very spiffy. Very nice. Very nice.
So realistically, that's all there is going on here. No, I'm just kidding, because it's all the emotional piece, right?
That's right.
Look the part.
I was hoping you'd like give us a little drama or something, but I'll take your sparkle anytime. Randy, how's it going in Georgia?
Spiffy sparkle. It's going a little wet in Georgia right now. We're getting that deluge from the Gulf of Mexico coming up our way, and I think my house is sliding off the slab or something. It's floating around here. So, but everything's good.
You're not even on an incline.
And just to let everybody know, I do have a great affinity and connection with my fellow panelist and my show host. I'm loyal to this brand right here.
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, Scotty, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I don't know how I can follow that up other than to say that it's sunny in Seattle and life is good.
Thanks a lot. Okay, Sisson, I'm going to give this...
Do you violate a copyright thing by saying that each week, Scotty? I mean, that's got to be...
Like you said, or Seattle is cloudy.
I'm surprised you haven't got a call, Scotty, from some local station to be their weatherman.
I would watch you. I would tune in from Boulder to watch you tell the weather, my friend.
So any stations out there that may be listening, Scott's for hire, okay?
He does great with green screens and whole sets.
Oh, he's all on top of that. You can even save yourself on production crew, okay? So we're going to start here. From a study that it's called From Promotion to Emotion study, found that 5 times that people with an emotional tie to your brand are 5 times more likely to consider buying from you, 13 times more likely to purchase, and 30 times more likely to pay a premium. So I think that underlines the importance of that tie. And I think we all want, a loyal clientele. We want people who feel that they know us and they're going to come back to us. So let's discuss maybe more about that data. I mean, is that what you find as well, guys? I mean, do you find that through your own experience that after a while building a loyalty with a client does actually pay off in terms of ROI?
Can I jump in with this one? All right. So while you were doing your opening, you mentioned the big companies like Nike and Apple, maybe even REI. I went and I looked at their blogs. Their blogs are all product-based. They are not trying to have a relationship with us on their blogs. What are they doing? They're using a different kind of content, video content, connective content, and that made me think of like Booze Hound Productions, so Go Phil and Kate Boyer, because they make videos on a regular basis that are promoting what they're doing, and they get a lot of views, and they're making an emotional connection in a different way. So I think it's first understanding the audience that you want and the audience that you have, and delivering content in a way that makes sense to them. What is that combination? Because we don't have to do everything in our communication strategy that everybody else is doing or that's available to us. If we're selective, we can get to be more creative and cohesive and connective in what we choose to do. And I think when that occurs, so setting everything else aside, yes, I find that those stats are they're very true.
But what's interesting that you brought up, Jess, is that you're right. This is not through content marketing per se. These companies are doing it through advertising.
Right.
They're creating advertising that connects emotionally.
Yes.
And I think most of us don't tend to think of it that way. But Randy, you had mentioned a few shows ago how that movement towards that kind of advertising has really taken over. Could you maybe expand on that a bit?
Well, first I want to say that I think we always rush and we talk about Anheuser-Busch, or we talk about Coke, or we talk about Nike, and then we say, okay, how does a small? You can't compare your local mom and pop to those mega brands. I mean, think of Nike. All Nike's got to do is put shoes on, half of the SEC football teams, and all those fans are going to, they have an affinity to the, Arkansas Razorbacks, and they wear Nike or they wear Under Armour, and that's a connection that they make. I mean, that's just branding, and that's building that brand. Small guy can't do anything like that, so he does have to do what Jessica was sharing, find some kind of niche, some kind of little, adder that will separate them and create an attention grabber for potential customers out there. I'm going to say once you get, think of the upswing of social media a few years ago. What social media was based on us, the businesses developed. Well, it was social media was based on social media, and then marketing took it over, and marketing said, okay, you're going to use social media to have an authentic voice and have a two-way dialogue with your customers to build that relationship. Okay, much like it opens the door to the small mom and pop who builds that relationship when somebody comes in their store, and you relate it. I always go back to I have a strong affinity to Coca-Cola and many other little brands because my grandfather was a small town merchant, ran 2 little stores in the little town he had. He had the little country store, and I could go in there as a little kid raised up. I could get all the Cokes I wanted, and it wasn't necessary that I got the Cokes because I could get Knee-High, I could get RC, I could get all that. It was the drummers, the salespeople that came in and how they treated my grandfather and how he reacted to them. They built a big affinity towards each other, and that's the same thing that we do with social media. So if you can find a video or a connection, a way to engage, an Instagram contest or something like that, and you highlight those customers, I think it does transcend into a more loyalty, and those numbers will go up. 30% I would think is probably, in my mind, it's probably low as far as paying a premium. I don't think people. There's people that never bat an eye at another coffee shop. It's only Starbucks.
Interesting. Because we have all this talk of P2P marketing, person to person, and the human to human marketing and all that. And you're saying, I understand what you're saying with the big brands because we do identify. Like, I'm not a brand person. I'm not a label person. I don't, particularly. I would not put a Nike tattoo on my ankle. But some people do. But I also know that there's some kids who would wear a T-shirt from a local skateboard shop and swear by it, and they're small, independent, and because of what you're saying is because the service that they get, that they and they feel this person, that the salesperson, the store owner is on the same wavelength as them, and even your example of Coke, the fact it's the people who actually entered the store and had a person-to-person exchange with your grandfather that made the difference for you. And
I think I read one time that when Monster Energy was starting in the UK, they spent their entire advertising budget outside of sponsoring something was they would give these caps away to those kids. You know, they'd walk in there and they'd give them a cap with Monster Energy, and they were just everywhere. All of a sudden, all these kids are walking around with things. And I think that's like Gary Vee talking about. He wants to give every kid coming up a New York Jets jersey. You know, building that fan base for the future when he possibly owns that, because that's his vision to do that. And that's why I go back to my roots when I was a young boy who didn't know anything about brands. He was just trying to get candy out of the candy rack, or Cokes out of the Coke box, and it was always Coke, or as my grandfather would call it, dope. Give me a dope, that's I guess from the cocaine. But anyway, that's how I built that. And I always think about that. I think about, now he was a merchant, right? And we were talking about this in the green room, kill them with kindness. People would come into now this is a rural, poor time, I was born in the mid-50s, grew up in the 60s, that time frame, and these people didn't have much money. They were farming, some of them, down, disabled and stuff like that, and they come in and they trade eggs, so he did a lot of bartering and stuff like that, but he would never send anybody out of his store that needed something, even if they had no way of paying him whatsoever. He'd always take care of it.
Scott, do you have any examples of that kind of not, I won't call it marketing, but that kind of behavior with clients?
Okay, sure. I think that one of the things that we're talking about is reach as well, and a big company, organization, corporation has to have a big reach because they've got to sell things all over the place. If you're a small operation, such as myself or those in the film strip, or small businesses and whatnot, you don't have to reach that many people. You just have to reach enough. And one of the ways to do that is through what's different now is that we're able to do that directly. We have a potential for a direct connection with those people that we need to reach, and it's via the internet and digital and all of that. And leveling the playing field even a little bit more is, for example, with video. Video is very small. A video set can be 3 feet by 4 feet, and yet with people on the other side of the screen, when they look at it, it's as big whether I produce it or Coca-Cola or Pepsi produces it. Now, obviously, there are other things in play, but at least there's enough of a level playing field. Digging deeper, all we need to do then as small businesses, and this is the lesson I learned from you, Ray, is you be yourself. You just go out there and now if you're a terrible, crummy person, that's not good advice. If you've got terrible products, well, maybe you need to do something else. So that's what I would say. Be a good person, have great products, utilize the new resources that are available to us, and don't try and reach everybody, but just try and reach enough people so that you can have that mutual loyalty that you've been talking about.
Go ahead, Jess.
Okay, I was going to say there's some skills that pop up here, and part of this is it goes back to networking and relationship building, because only through time, effort, and energy, and both people giving on each side of the relationship can this occur, and that's at a person-to-person level. And so if we're talking at that level, we're talking about what makes up networking and relationship building. A key piece of that is listening. So can we actually not only listen, but absorb and understand what somebody else is telling us so that we can figure out, can we help them today? Or there's no way to help them today, but I know I like this person. I know this is my future client. So how I can be thinking when I walk away from a conversation, how I might help them tomorrow, and what I might do to stay in touch with them that is not salesy, that is not in their face, but it's supporting them where they're at, regardless of if they're working with my business or me personally if I'm a salesperson. And that's also different when we talk about a brand, because we interchange service and products, and I think that we need to consider ourselves, especially those who are providing services, there's a product and we need to separate ourselves from that product. Let's say I am a one-person business and I do everything in my business. Okay, that's cool and all, but there's still a process that I do, and that's the product. I'm not the product. I need to have thicker skin than being rejected by somebody who doesn't want my product. But I can look at my product outside of me and figure out how can this product fit in somebody's life. And then I go out and I listen for that. So I take the big companies to the little companies. We've got that. We can bring that part right down. Let those guys do what they do. But we've got to separate ourselves when we are in a solopreneur role and have our process or our product, even if it's just us. That's okay. Our knowledge and our brain, it's still separate. And how do we listen for where that would fit and help people when we hear that?
I think that goes beyond the solopreneur aspect. I think a big business, and I've always subscribed to the idea of how can I enhance my client's life. Mm-hmm. What can I do? What does this brand do to help this potential customer? And if you approach product launches like that, mm-hmm. Then you can. Now, our customers, our clients are all diverse people, right? We're a diverse universe, so you got various things, okay? Another thing to keep in mind, think of Coca-Cola. How long has Coca-Cola been around? Or how long has Nike been around? Those generations change, right? So you got to continually adapt. How do you take Coke, the formula that's only been changed, well, it was changed one other time and they quickly changed that, but how do you take a formula that's been around in a can and keep that across the spectrum of the generations? Mm-hmm. So it's packaging, it's using the video that Scott was talking about and Jessica was talking about. It's finding that audience where they are and appealing to them. Anheuser-Busch has the best damn appealer in the world, and that's those Clydesdales, right? I mean, think of that. Everybody looks forward to that Super Bowl thing or the Christmas ad from the Clydesdales. I mean, it's a big thing. Let your hometown have a parade and the Clydesdales show up. People will go crazy for that. I mean, mm-hmm. that's a big ambassador for the brand.
So it's a question of how they make you feel, and again, so they appeal to your emotions. They it's like lifestyle advertising or whatever. You want to feel a part of that. And my question, because Jessica, you brought something. I mean, empathy and listening is so important. But I'm finding in smaller scales, like for instance restaurants or whatever that I visit, when the wallet meets the pavement kind of thing, service and customers' attention is the first to go. Right, they'll cut back on inventory, they'll cut back on staff, but they'll always cut back on that customer-facing aspect. And I'm not sure why that is, because I mean I've run a restaurant. My priority is always the customer, but it seems that people are having a difficult time probably rationalizing. Okay, this is going to cost me a lot. If I take the time to listen to my customers and talk to them individually and find out what they want and make changes to the way I do business and all that, no, it's too much. And I think that's the problem with social media, is that we had this false thing when social media started, that look at all the people we can reach. And then as Scott said, it's not about all those people you can reach. It's about that small tribe that you can create out there around your brand.
I heard an objection. I don't know what the objection is, but the words that you used and what you described, Ray, tells me when somebody goes, a company goes, you know what, I've got to tighten my belt. Well, tightening the belt by whacking things might not be the right thing to do. So there's a whole series of questions that come up for me that go, okay, so business owner or business manager, I'm going to ask you a few more questions because I hear you want to contract what you're spending. And when you contract, you're operating in a place of lack, and you show up to your customers that way. So maybe we can change where the spending is occurring and reduce some areas, but not just go, I'm going to take out this and this and this and this, because it might not be the right thing. It might be more like a recipe where some needs to come from here, more needs to come from here, and maybe a little bit goes over here. So just contracting doesn't work. Contracting with the opportunity to expand in a different area, maybe not to the same level, but to some level, is really what's going to make a sustainable business. So I totally just took a tangent, but I think that that's important in what I heard. There's an objection
because
here.
Payroll is always usually the most expensive element in your expenses. That's where people tend to chop because they can chop a big block off.
I really love your analogy of the recipe, Jess, because when you visualize that, you mess around. If you think of a business like a recipe, and then all of a sudden you imagine that you're going to put a lot of spices on because it's cheap. The salt is cheap, but you're going to take away some of something else, and then imagine what it'll taste like at the end. Man, it's going to be terrible. So maybe that will, the recipe analogy lets you cut through the emotion, and you think objectively at the end of the day, what's the meal going to look like? What's it going to taste like?
And whatever you do, don't leave your cake out in the rain.
I think another thing that Scott talked about and took his hat to you, Ray, was about the right audience, right? And social media. I mean, like you said, everybody jumped on social media, and you've got the universe. But if you're at the local restaurant and you're going through times, you know who your customers are. They're the customers that come into your establishment. They're the people that live in your community and surrounding area. Whatever that radius may be. So you can use social media. You can gather your clients. If they're on Twitter, you can gather them that way. If they're on Facebook, you can gather them that way, and you can use those things very effectively messaging to that crowd, because most people have gotten savvy enough that they've got groups and they've got lists and things like that. So if you're having an issue and you're trying to cut back on something, you can take some of that, put it over there, message to your potential customers that you're having, some kind of big Italian celebration at your restaurant, and it's going to be this and that. Using those little elements to tickle that crowd and try to get some meat to come into there and spend some money with you. I mean, that's what I see effective. But what I heard was, this is a couple of years ago, and maybe you've got to be on there 24/7. You got to be wrong. No, you don't. I don't want to hear from. I do that. I follow a lot of the bars and restaurants in the community I live in, and if I go to my list. I've got them all in a list, and I can see what they're talking about. What's at the Nat tonight? What is on special? I can see that real quick.
Before I'm going to, because I think Jess is going to do a screen share here, and before I do that. I'm going to ask, where does the line cross between connecting with someone emotionally and manipulating them emotionally? And we discussed this a little bit in the green room. And I had done a post on Facebook saying that we were going to do this show today and do a blab afterwards discussing emotional connection. And they sent me a YouTube of the founder of PR, and I'm going to look up that name again because I'm blanking out all the time. Where is it? Edward Bernays, The Art of Public Manipulation, which he took propaganda, military propaganda, and basically turned that into PR as we know it, advertising as we know it. So, is there a danger that this kind of appeal is interpreted as manipulation from clients?
Talk to the tobacco industry.
Right.
Well, they're the first. Actually, they were the first client of this guy. They wanted women to smoke because they were losing 50% of their audience. So what he had done,
they were dying off with cancer, but nobody.
Well, no, he had arranged at the Easter parade in 07 or whatever time it was, very early when they had Easter parades, that he had arranged a bunch of debutantes to pull out a pack of cigarettes and light up at the Easter parade when there's all kinds of photographers and all that. And that basically kicked off, he said, and they used the slogan something about taking over your power. They basically associated cigarette smoking with women and establishing power.
Women's suffrage, and that's the ultimate disruptor that I've heard all day right there. I mean, just think of that. Think about at that time what happened when they pulled out those cigarettes.
Oh, yeah, well, it was huge. He said it was covered all over the world. And then of course he became so popular that PR firms started to open and then it just took off. Jess, did you want to just share that screen?
Sure. And this guy that you mentioned probably came up with all of these. And I found a website in researching for this show that talked about different fallacies of emotional marketing. So basically, what are ways that we could manipulate another or technically do harm by leaving out information, and there's a whole bunch of these. So the title at the bottom is thou shalt not commit logical fallacies, and so it's talking about how could we become more critical thinkers as an audience so our BS meter becomes more honed, but also being able to recognize where on our personal scale we might be, where that line might be, because what I consider doing harm to somebody else or myself might be different than each of you guys.
Oh, gee, Jess, I was reading that.
Oh, well, yeah, it's such tiny text. I put the link on the event page. You may have seen me.
I like the one about not using, what was it? Not using the word natural as in not natural, but there was another one about the Scot, something, not Scot like Scott Scowcroft, but the word Scotsman. Did you see that? And I was like,
no true Scotsman, making what could be called an appeal to purity as a way to dismiss relevant criticisms or flaws in an argument.
Oh, that's okay. You have to. Did you share that, by the way?
I put it on the event page, yeah. So you'll have the link to use, because this is cool, and I thought it was quite neat what they do and how they're, how they approached this, and I liked the idea of understanding critical thinking to how to apply emotion in a way that does not do harm to others, because then you get into this gross manipulation place.
Well, exactly. And before, as we close, there's about 4 minutes left. What can we do as small, smaller enterprises, people that don't have budgets for huge advertising campaigns? What can we do? And I was going to ask you, do you think, okay, I'll ask you, Hangouts or Blabs or any kind of face-to-face kind of platforms will help establish that kind of personal connection? Is that something that
I think it depends. I think it depends on what your product or service is and where your audience is. I mean, you got to answer that. If you've got there's not many people on Blab, but if you've got a large following there on Twitter or something like that, yeah, you can use those platforms to
use it as a tool. Yeah, use it as a tool to create a knowledge base that goes on your website that becomes a place of authority. So you're better at driving traffic to your website than driving a community or a group of people on Hangouts or on Blab. So why not use the technology as a tool to get you what you need to get it on your website, so that people have an idea of who you are and what you're about, and making sure, of course, to get beyond the person and the product. What is the product? What does it do? How does it help? Why and how does it make it easier for you?
Now, this may be a topic for a future show, and maybe if you think it might be, please write it down so I can remember it. Is that whole point of driving people to your website? It seems to me, I've been reading articles that saying that people don't want to do that anymore. People don't want to go to people's websites anymore. They want to stay where they're at. And also because there's also suspicion that if they're going to go to your website, they're going to get on a landing page that's going to try to sell them something. So there's this kind of feeling that people don't do that. They want everything to be on one place. So
I don't think that's
I
don't think that's totally true. I mean, I peruse websites all the time. If I'm looking to buy something, I'm going to do that. And I'll go in Lowe's and I'll find a product, and if I see the product, then I'll go to that manufacturer's website to look at it. I mean, that's it. But I would say this, back to your question a while ago, Ray. Your former profession in the restaurant business. So you run a restaurant, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you could take a Blab or a Hangout on Air, something like that, very easily bring in your chef, right? And do some kind of small cooking show where he whips up something in a 15-minute segment or a 10-minute segment or something like that. You pre-do all that, and you use that content. And share it. I mean,
that's a great. And that's where
and you could use that inside your say inside your restaurant if you've got a waiting area where people are waiting to be seated or something like that. And you can play that type thing, or stack them. Get somebody like Scott to come in and build you a package of several of those where it loops around and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean that's inexpensive stuff. And he mentioned something. What did you say? A 2x3 square. I mean, really, this is all you need. I mean, you can do it with that, right? I mean,
totally.
Can sit there
and a selfie stick. a selfie stick in your phone. You got it.
No, that was a great suggestion and a great to drop the show on. It's you're right, and that's how I see Blab being really effective, because it is so simple, and if you have a Twitter following of any size, they are reachable through Blab. It's just a matter of you letting people know how to join in. And speaking of Blab,
I will say one thing before you close, and I know it's time's up and time to go, but they are very inexpensive, and Scott will tell you this. The post-production is important, but it also is the prep going into it, so you want to look professional. I mean, you don't want somebody sitting in your nice restaurant looking at you and some kind of doing it on a picnic table, so think about the presentation too.
Why is it okay, and I'll just go a little bit of a tangent, but I don't understand people taking the time to do this, to schedule something, come up with content and all that, and not at least have lighting, a decent microphone, not paying attention to what's behind them. Those are so basic, Anyway, that was a little rant. Sorry about that. Anyway, so take care, guys. We're going to be jumping into the Blab. Let me see if I can get my Blab card up. And please join us. Randy's going to be my co-chair again this week, and back by popular demand. I'll just lie and say that. He actually covered for BL last week, so this was actually his regular turn. So join us at blab.im, Ray Hiltz. You'll find it there, and we're going to be continuing the discussion, hopefully, with you. So thanks very much for joining us today. I enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.